Peace, peace, peace. I am Philip Roundtree. You're tuned into episode 37 of hashtag You Good Man. Again, I'm always blessed to have special people for whom I look up to come on the podcast. And again, this week is no different. We have Mr. Alfred Edmonds, who joined us 2 weeks ago. But, listen, things happen, right? Things happen, especially in the Instagram world. And so the video didn't save, but that also gives us the opportunity to go even deeper into the conversation. For those who were there and for those who weren't, you definitely missed something that was amazing. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of Mr. Edmonds, allow him to talk a little about who he is and what it is that he does, and then we're just going to get right to the questions. So we have Mr. Alfred Edmonds Jr., Senior Vice President, Executive Editor-at-Large of Black Enterprise. He's the content leader and co-creator of the Be Modern Man campaign, which is how I came to meet this amazing man, last time I said he's my mentor in my head, he was like, all right, get rid of the in my head part. So my mentor, Mr. Alfred Edmonds. He is also the lead instructor of the Destination Success Matters Mentor Masterclass series, which is taking place next week in Newark, New Jersey. We're going to let you plug that. You have more seats open?
Yeah, we have some seats open, so no, people should definitely roll in for that. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, and we're going to talk about the perks that come with that as well. He's in business with his wife, who's also, again, his business partner. They lead A to Z Personal Growth Enterprises, the parent company of Grown Zone Relationship Education, which really focuses on healthy relationships and what healthy relationships look like. Again, for those who weren't present for the last one, we really went in depth as far as to what healthy relationships look like, especially for men of color, and why it could potentially take us so long to get to the point of that recognition and that awareness of why it's so important. And last but not least, one of the things that, again, built our relationship and, is a foundation in the idea of physical wellness, right? Outside of mental wellness, which is an amazing thing, but physical wellness, we both are competitive bodybuilders. I saw that you have signed up for your first show of the season, which is coming at the end of this month, correct?
Yep, June 22nd. I've got less than 3 weeks to go, so you know what that means in terms of what I can eat and what I can't eat.
Yeah, it gets strict.
Yeah,
it gets
no
strict. And like the ghetto boys say, your mom start playing tricks on you, right?
True, for real.
For sure. So again, I'm honored to have Mr. Alfred Edmonds on the podcast. So how you feeling today?
I am feeling great. Man, every day it's good to be me. Everybody who knows me knows that's my philosophy of life. So, no, it's really good. I'm really happy. I'm always happy to talk to you. And so I know we had technical difficulties with the first one, but I wasn't even mad about that, man. We get to talk again. I'm such a huge believer and fan in what you do and why you do it. So it's just an honor to be able to talk to you, man.
Oh, I appreciate it. So we're going to get right into it, and we're actually going to veer off from the questions a little bit. When they see us, I didn't get a chance to read your article, but I want you to give your thoughts, because I believe we are in line. I saw some of your social media posts with regards to the Netflix film made by Ava DuVernay with regards to the Central Park Five. So what are your thoughts on When They See Us?
Well, that post that I just wrote is still at blackenterprise.com and on the men's channel. If people want to check it out, blackenterprise.com/men. Is really relevant to what you do, what we believe about mental health and mental health for Black men in particular, Black people. And that is my point of right now. I do not choose to watch that miniseries, as important as it is, as big a fan as I am of Ava DuVernay, because I don't think it would be good for my own mental health. And I think we as Black people have been acculturated to choose trauma whether we should or we shouldn't. In other words, I made a point of leading off in the piece that if I were still raising minor children, I'd be in front of the TV with them watching that, because I think enduring and being re-traumatized is a price you kind of got to pay to prepare your kids and other young people, in this case, for what they're going to, you can have your kids walking around naive about what could happen, and so they need to be equipped to survive. And I use as an example, my mother, when Roots came out in 1977, I was 17 years old. I was the oldest of 4 kids. And my mother made us sit down. That was the first time we got to stay up past our bedtime, as a matter of fact, on a school night. she was like, no, you're going to watch every episode of Roots, because she was raised in the rural, or born in the rural South, you know, and there were things that she couldn't really communicate to us about the trauma she'd experienced raising us, that watching Roots, as hard as it was for her, she felt was necessary for us. So I get it. I'm definitely not saying people shouldn't go see it. On the flip side, I think what Black people need permission to do, that we don't give ourselves permission to do, and the rest of the world doesn't give us permission to do, is to not do things that re-traumatize us unless we have a damn good reason to do it. And, you know, I'm easily emotionally affected by films, both positively and negatively. So if I don't think a film is going to be good for my spirit and my mind, I'm not going to watch it just to watch it. And in this case, I lived through the whole Central Park 5 thing. I was there. I was a young Black male in the city during that time. You guys, if you didn't live through that, you don't know what that meant, not just for the 5 young men that were affected, but every Black male, especially young Black males in that city, in terms of the siege mentality that we were under, when the narrative was, you know, young Black men in groups, Black and brown men, boys, were wilding, so-called running in packs through the city, attacking people. And what that meant for the policing, what that meant for just every encounter could have been an explosive encounter, if just because you're, you know, the perception is that if you're a young Black man and you're not wearing a suit and tie, and I didn't know, you know how it is. There's some things that are made. So that wasn't a good time. That was traumatizing for most Black men who grew up in that area. I was in my late 20s, I think, at that point. You know, and so my thing was, if I had kids, or if I had some white friends that would watch it with me, I don't. I would watch it with them because they need to see it. I don't need to see it. And my whole thing about films like that is that the people who most need to see it are the people who are totally in denial about when we say we're under siege, we're under stress, we can't trust the media, because that was a media assassination much as it was a police assassination. So anyway, to not drag it out, my point is Black people need to take permission, to wait to be given it, that if you think something, a choice is that you need to make a choice to protect your mental health, make that choice, no matter what people say. You know, and we've been taught that it's almost part of our cultural responsibility to embrace trauma and suffering, because that's just who we are and what we do. And I used to buy into that too, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I definitely understand and respect your perspective with regards to why somebody would watch it. I just came from the barbershop, and the woman who works there, she has a 42-year-old daughter, and so that shows how old she is. And she was like, she watched the first 2 episodes, because even though she knew about it, she still lived relatively a sheltered life. And so with that, she was aware of the situation, but she wasn't aware of it to the depths of what the film showed. And for that, I completely understand. I think for me, it's first, where's the balance, right? Like we promote these films, we promote a lot of things with regards to our experience, and they're usually traumatic experiences. Like, how many slave movies are we going to have?
Oh yeah.
How many movies are we going to have that talk about the trauma that we've experienced? I coined the phrase inner trauma. It's not entertainment; it's truly inner trauma. When we talk about a lot of the things that we love as Black folk, I made a post about. It stems from traumatic, unhealthy, or isms type of situation. So we talk about soul food. Soul food comes from slavery and have to make something out of nothing, right? And so we take that with us, which has unhealthy physical effects. We talk about hip hop was birthed out of poverty, out of isms, out of being outcast. We cling to hip hop. Now it's our movies, our films, as far back as we can go. And it's just like, it gets frustrating for me, is because it's just like, when can we have something where we can just be, where we're not overcoming something, right? Where we're not beating the odds, where we're not having our brains beaten. When we talk about, these are hood classics. When we talk about hood classics, when John Singleton died, we're talking about the trauma of the Black boy experience, Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, Baby Boy. And so for me, it was just like, I'm empathetic to, to the people who definitely had to experience that, and for those who are watching it, who really have no idea about the Black experience. But I'm like, you know, it's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. So if somebody has to watch that truly to get an understanding of the systems that negatively impact us, especially as Black men, there's a problem there in my eyes, right? Because
Right.
we have so many examples. We have Philando Castile. They're coming out with a movie based on Laquan McDonald. It's called 16 Shots. That comes out at the end of the month on
Yeah, yeah.
Showtime. Like, we have all of these experiences.
And part of the point that I made in the post, and I dropped even some of these names, Central Park 5, as horrible as what happened to them, and I would say us as young Black men in New York City, it's not a new revelation.
Exactly.
The Scottsboro Boys, the Groveland Four down in Florida, genocide. I mean, every almost 5 to 7 years, there's an example of some group of Black and brown boys being quote unquote railroaded, if not killed. And so it's not that the story shouldn't be told. I told you, don't get me wrong. The story should be told. What Ava DuVernay and the young men who are the direct victims of the whole Wilding accusations and the conviction and police misconduct and all of that, the story needs to be told. The question becomes, to your point, at what point do you, as a Black person, get to decide which of these stories you need to see and which ones you don't? I never saw 12 Years a Slave, not because I'm sure it was a great movie, but after, like I saw Roots, I get it.
Yeah, once you see Roots, you see it all.
I don't need to see another one. I saw Boys in the Hood once because I get emotional on films. I was so emotional about Boys in the Hood that I'd only seen it one time. I love that movie, but I only could see it once. And every time it comes on again, I ask myself, am I ready to really go to that space right now? And I haven't seen most of the other Hood. I haven't seen Menace to Society because I'm like, Boys in the Hood, I get, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure there were different stories, but to your point, how many versions of the same, listen, either you should watch content for education or entertainment. So I look at a movie and I'm like, am I going to really learn something that's different than my current understanding of the world? If the answer is no, then I'm watching it for entertainment value. And I don't feel entertained by looking at the trauma that I'm already living in the day-to-day. Like, I don't need to go to a movie to see the trauma. The trauma, like you said, is all around us. Every time we turn on the news, every time we, somebody else got shot and that shouldn't have been shot, somebody else. So it's a matter of, again, the film is doing well. It's going to do well. I expect Ava to win a whole bunch of awards for it. I think it's wonderful that it was done. But I think each Black person and each human being in general has a right to decide whether, going back to a traumatizing experience for any reason is good for them or not. And I used an example in a comment on Facebook earlier today. My wife, Zara, is a Katrina survivor.
Oh, wow.
I don't expect her, in fact, we don't even call her a Katrina survivor because we don't use that term. But my point is she experienced Katrina directly. When the anniversaries roll around and there's all these tributes and documentaries and stuff on Katrina, who would I look like saying, baby, we need to sit down and watch this all day? Yeah. Why should she be re-traumatized by an experience that she pretty much lost everything she had, and for a point she thought she lost family members. It turned out, thank God, she hadn't. And so my thing is, if a person is going to re-experience trauma, they should have a really good reason. If you're a victim of sexual assault, yeah, you might go to court and testify knowing you're going to re-experience the trauma to testify, but your reasoning is you want to hold the person accountable for what you were done. But you don't want to sit at the family barbecue talking about, let me tell you what it was like when I got sexually assaulted. Yeah. So we have to have a right to protect our mental health. That's my bottom line. And Black people are taught we don't have that right.
Facts. I think it's, equally as important, because I have gotten into conversations with individuals and say, listen, you don't have to watch this. The same thing you were saying. When I read the article about Ava providing grief counselors, and it was just like, wow, she recognized the gravity of this. However, do we recognize what's happening?
Exactly.
Right? So do we have a grief counselor? Do we have a support system that we can we can converse with about what we just experienced? To bring it closer to home, within the last 48 hours or so, I didn't know that I knew somebody that had killed somebody, right? He's a young kid. And so it's a very high profile case here in Philadelphia. And again, when we talk about that trauma, that was traumatic for me once he told me what happened and what he's currently facing once he goes to trial in October. And it's just like, man, again, one of the reasons why I don't watch it, because this is what I experience on a daily basis.
Yes.
And just being black in America. And so here I am having to have this conversation with this young man. So I need my entertainment I can't have the lines blurred, right? I need my entertainment to be my entertainment. I need that to be my something that I use as a coping strategy, not something that I use to continue to evoke undesirable thoughts, feelings, and emotions, right?
Right.
So I think it's critical. And I do want to get back to that point. If somebody is watching this and they're saying, they do want to watch it, it's important to have a conversation with somebody else about it. You shouldn't be doing this alone. This is something, especially something like this, right? When we share our experiences, that's a great way for us to help work through and understand and really feel our way through the uncomfortable things that uncomfortable things that might come up during this period of time. So I definitely want to encourage somebody to really have conversations with others. Reach out if you know somebody has watched it. Yo, how you feeling? What are your thoughts on it? Just so they're not sitting there harboring that inside, because then again it begins to eat you from the inside out. So it's so critical.
Yeah, and even in terms of when like in the article I said, I'm not saying I will never ever watch it. There may be a reason, an occasion where I decide to watch it, but when I have to watch something like that, I got to think about, okay, what am I going to be doing afterwards? Like, I might need space. I may not need to be around people. You know what I'm saying? Don't just watch it like it's a piece of content and you're just going on with your day. I've seen people all over Facebook who responded to my post saying they tried to watch it, and after the first episode, they were just a wreck. They couldn't even go to work, or they couldn't deal with their family. So I'm just saying we need to take it lightly. We should take seriously that what we choose to consume, just like with food, if you know something's going to give you an upset stomach, or you know you're allergic to something, don't just eat it because everybody says this is what we all eating. Let's eat. You have a right to say, I'm not going to have a serving of that, or I'm going to have less of that, or I'm going to eat it in smaller portions, or I'm not going to eat it at all. And I feel the same way about that when it comes to consuming content and media. You have a right to decide what's going to be healthy for you in the short run or the long run. Around you or having people have conversations with, as opposed to just, a brother said to me on Facebook yesterday, he said, I watched it and I survived. And I'm like, we need to set a higher standard than survive.
We've been doing that for long enough. We've been surviving for long enough.
Yeah, you're right. It didn't kill you, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. In fact, one of the things that when I counsel some of our clients, and it was that revelation I had for myself, and some of my other mentees have heard me tell them this when I think they're not giving enough self-care to themselves. I'm like, even though Superman can take bullets, he still recognizes being shot at as a hostile act. He doesn't just say, I can take it, shoot at him.
Yeah.
It's because it's not right that he, so, we've been so, acculturated as black people, black men and black women, as almost superhuman because of the abuse that we've been able to endure and, like you said, overcome. These movies about overcoming. That doesn't make the abuse right, and we shouldn't take pride in accepting the abuse, especially since bullets bounce off of you and injure other people who can't take the bullet.
And that's what I wanted to get into next, just about, how our experiences really impact our relationships, right? And especially if we don't have healthy ways to cope, then we're talking about it's not only hurting us, but it's hurting our friends, it's hurting our family, it's hurting our intimate relationships. So if you could just speak on that, especially being an expert with regards to relationships.
Well, everything starts with the health of your relationship with yourself. And both of us have our regular regimen of what I call mental fitness. Other people call therapy. I have a
Yeah.
personal trainer and coach for my physical fitness, and I have a therapist who's my personal trainer and coach for my mental fitness that I see every week. And my point with that, with black people in particular, black men in particular, but people in general, is that you need to have a healthy foundation, a healthy relationship with yourself. And that doesn't happen just because you look in the mirror and you like what you look like, or you
Yeah.
got a great body, or your mama told you that they loved you. Or your relationship with yourself is something you have to actively build. And if that relationship is unhealthy, if you dislike yourself for some reason, or you think of yourself as inadequate or incomplete or not enough or shamed or guilty or not good enough, that is going to poison every other relationship you have, whether you intended or not, with your children, with your significant other, with other family members. In fact, much of the trauma that you are born into is unresolved trauma of people who love you, who've inflicted their trauma on you practically from birth. And you don't even understand why you're tripping. There's a great book, I can't remember the author, but I would recommend it. It's called It Didn't Start With You. And it talks about you're born with a certain amount of trauma that is practically genetically in you from previous generations' trauma, and which is absolutely true with it's easy to see with black people and Jewish people who are descendants of Holocaust survivors. So you have to really be serious and intentional, and we define part of being grown is being intentional about parenting yourself. And part of parenting yourself is not to just pretend that the trauma doesn't exist or pray it away. And I'm a man of faith. I'm a Christian. I believe in the Lord and I pray. But take it to the Lord. I thank the Lord for my therapist because that was the tool He granted me with to work through these issues. So I'm just very passionate about this idea that if your foundational relationship with yourself is unhealthy, and we've been taught that somehow some other person, your soulmate, you're gonna find your soulmate, and they're gonna make it complete, and they're gonna make it all right. It's that belief system is the chief reason why most relationships are unhealthy, because we think if we take an unhealthy person and find a healthy person, the healthy person is going to fix the unhealthy person.
Exactly.
When we know that what happens is the unhealthy person makes the healthy person sick. So
exactly. Exactly.
So
or you wonder why you keep running through healthy people, right? And where nobody's staying. Nobody's staying around.
Yep,
yes.
Yep.
It's I think it's so important that you say that, because it is critical that we have this coming to God moment about self, and it can be scary. I know for me personally, it's been within the last few years where I can no longer. Yes, I've experienced trauma throughout my life, whether it's interaction with the police or being bullied at various points in life. But at some point, I use the phrase, there's empathy with accountability, right? So I can have empathy for my experience. I can have empathy for somebody else's experience that got them to this point. However, at some point, if we really want to live a healthy, fruitful, and productive life and truly thrive, then we need to hold ourselves accountable. And we need to hold ourselves accountable by continuing to grow. Once we get to a point where we feel like we can't learn anymore, then, is life really worth living at that point?
Well, you're not living at that point. I urge your constituents, your listeners, to go to growenzone.com, because we tell people our book, Loving in the Grown Zone, is actually a personal growth book disguised as a relationship book. Because one of the key principles, to your point, is that we believe that your main purpose as a human being, no matter who you are, what your background is, and it's expressed differently in each life because we're individuals, is to grow, to increase your capacity to grow and to increase your capacity to love. And that once you stop that, you've achieved a state of arrested development, and now you're regressing, because you're either growing or you're receding. There's no in between.
Yeah.
Or the in between is dead, because only inanimate objects that don't grow, chairs don't grow, tables don't grow, rocks don't grow, because they exist, but they're not growing. So there's a lot of people who are animated, but they're not growing, which is the metaphor of the zombie. they're animated, but they're not alive. So,
Yeah.
so my larger point is, you're right. Things have happened to you, choices you've made, things that people have done to you, conditions we were born in. We have no control over that. But the one thing we always have control of, and we have a responsibility to assert that control if we consider ourselves grown, which I differentiate from adult, is I am going to grow from this, and I am going to be accountable for the relationship I have with myself, and therefore the choices I make going forward. As my wife always says, as long as you can breathe and learn, it can get better. But you got to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. No, listen, I completely agree. And then, shifting gears even more, right? When we talk about the idea of truly understanding self, and especially a lot of people out here nowadays, including myself, are entrepreneurs. If you don't have an idea of who you are prior to regardless of being an entrepreneur or just having a career in general, if you don't have an idea of who you are, you will find yourself becoming burned out. Right? We see that's been added to as a disorder now. Burnout is something that social workers we've experienced for, I think, since the beginning
Forever.
of time. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But now it's being recognized. But I think part of that is there's not an awareness of self. So, personal story, I worked in child welfare here in Philadelphia for DHS. It's similar to DYFS in New York and whatever it is, DYFS in Jersey, whatever it is in New York. And it got to the point where after 4.5 years, I said, listen, I can't do this anymore, right? I was responsible for 100 and something kids. I had 50 cases on my caseload. I'm investigating child abuse and neglect. Therapy wasn't being pushed by the higher ups, right, or by the agency. And so it got to the point where I had a dream one night, and it was a traumatic dream that woke me up. And so I went in there that next day, and I said, here's my resignation letter. She was like, you don't want to give 2 weeks notice? I said, no, if something brings me back here, then that means something went wrong in my life. Because I recognized that I was burned out. I couldn't do it anymore, and my wellness was being jeopardized. And I see that so often with entrepreneurs especially, and that's why the rates of depression, the rates of suicide, and then just high-pressure jobs like lawyers, what have you, they're much higher than the average population, because I think a lot of it is not having awareness of self. And so what that looks like is you're attaching yourself to the outcome, right? So if you don't get a sale, you take it as a personal affront instead of it just being, okay, you know what? That's that's not me. That's not a character deficit. That's not a skill deficit, right? But that's just the ebb and flows of what comes with it. So with you being both an entrepreneur and having a quote unquote, I don't want to say a traditional job, right? And managing both. What has been your experience with regards to mental health between the two and trying to manage that?
Well, the life I live now is a direct result of getting to near breakdown after a really traumatic marriage. That was the sum total of the choices I've made in relationships since I was 14. Led to a catastrophic set of choices in a very toxic, unhealthy marriage. And I'm not putting it all on the other person. The other person may have brought their issues to the table, but my unhealthy approach to why I chose relationships and what I thought about love led me to that point. And it pushed me to psychological, economic, emotional. It was a come to Jesus moment in terms of who are you, man? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you?
Yeah.
And I tell people, it's not just, knowing yourself. At some point, you have to decide in a real serious way that you're going to love yourself unconditionally. And when I say that, I mean literally, like, as I was coming out of this period, which is now maybe 11 or 12 years ago now, one of the examples, I would literally take my favorite love songs, and instead of thinking of them in terms of somebody else, I would put my own name in it, and so I can get comfortable with saying those words of devotion and commitment and, oh my God, to myself. Because once I was able to do that, then the choices that I made before that point were very, very different than the choices I made for myself after that point. And things like being able to walk away from a job is killing you. When you don't love yourself, you think, I can't do this. I shouldn't do this. You don't put yourself, you put yourself first in all. I put myself first in all things, ahead of my wife,
Yeah.
ahead of my children.
Having trouble hearing you. Not sure.
Coming out of that trauma, and I'm talking about this is like 2006, 2007, when I was conscious during that part of my journey. I started saying, suppose you did exactly what you really wanted to do, not just with, this marriage that you're ending, but suppose for once in your life you didn't focus on pleasing other people, because I'm a recovering people pleaser, and you really said, I'm going to do, as long as it doesn't hurt or violate anybody else, you're going to do exactly what the love of your life wants to do, what Alfred wants to do. So I tell people, the love of your life is not out there. You are the love of your life. But if you don't treat yourself that way, you won't make the right choices. And that led to me making decisions about what I wanted my career to look like. That led to me making better decisions in dating. Not that I didn't make some mistakes after that, but my first real healthy relationship is with my wife, Zara, who I would have even taken seriously if I hadn't decided to make these other decisions. And, we've been together, 10 years this coming September, or November that we committed to each other, but we've known each other for over 10 years. It was so the work you see me doing, I'm at Black Enterprise because I love being at Black Enterprise, and I'm doing what I want to do. I do Grown Zone because that's what I really want to do. My first stint in bodybuilding, I tried to squeeze it in the margins. I kind of enjoyed it, but I wasn't. This time, I'm like, no, you're going to see how far you can push this because you love doing this. And when people say, how do you have time to do that? I do a radio show called Be Lifted Up Radio, letter B, Lifted Up Radio, which is a finance and faith-based radio show. It's new, so it's here in the New York area on WLIB in New York, but it's being syndicated around the country. My point is, people look at all the things that I do and they think I'm doing a billion different things. And I'm like, the reason I can do all the stuff that I do is that I have no problem saying no to what I don't want to do. People I don't want to talk to, people I don't want to spend time with, and so I live a life, and when I say it's good to be me, I live a great life. And when I say a great life, it doesn't mean I don't have bad days and things don't go wrong, and there are times that I'm pissed and times I'm disappointed and times that I let myself down and let other people down. The point is, everything that I do is because I want to do it. I don't believe in guilt. I don't believe in shame. I don't practice it on myself or others. I don't do things out of obligation. If you're doing it you can do it out of obligation or you can do it out of love. You can't do both. Yeah. And once you make that decision that I'm only going to do what I really, really want to do, not what other people think I should do, not what my mama would want me to do, not what all black people do, not what all black men do, not what all men do, all of those things that people say, well, you got to do this because you're that. True happiness, and too many of us find out the hard way, and burnout is one of the ways we find out, but it's not the only way. We've been taught that happiness is about what we do. If we, finding your passion and doing your passion, that's what you should do.
It's going to bring about happiness.
It's going to bring about happiness. And actually, I wrote a post about this at grownzone.com, and I'll share it on social media. You'll see it. That happiness is not about loving what you do. That's a trap. Happiness is about loving who you are, ardently, passionately loving who you are on any given day. And that's an active thing. That's not a passive thing. Because we both know, I have friends and colleagues, not friends and colleagues, friends and acquaintances who are professional athletes and former professional athletes. And I know what it means when they stop playing and they don't know who they are. They literally like, what I thought I was a football player. I'm not a football player anymore. Who am I? And then
they try to figure out who they are, and then that's when we see them spiraling out of control.
And it's not just it's not just famous athletes. You have people tell me, "Oh, I'm gonna be a mother, and I'll be a mother for the rest of." I'm like, no, what happens when your kids don't need you anymore? And you see, parents getting depressed because their kids don't need them anymore, and they wrap their whole identity in, "I'm a mother," or "I'm a father," or they literally hold their children back. They stunt their children's growth to maintain that level of dependence because they they wrapped up their whole value of themselves as human beings and being a mother of this person or a parent. So it's not about loving what you do. What you do is going to change over time. Someday I'm not going to be the executive editor at large at Black Enterprise. Someday I'm not going to be somebody that people want on their podcast to talk about stuff. Someday I'm not going to be a bodybuilder. Someday I'm not, someday, but I'm always going to be me. And I always go back to always remembering that when I came into this world, when I was born, before I knew about any of this other stuff about my parents and my race and my gender and my career and body, when I looked in the mirror when I was a baby, I loved everything I saw. Because nobody had told me that I shouldn't.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
And I stay in that space. I stay in that space of always remembering, no matter what I do, no matter what happens to me, other people can stop loving me. And they have the right to do that. But I'm never going to stop actively remembering who I was when I was a baby, looking in the mirror thinking, wow, this is some amazing stuff. This is perfect. What could be better than, and everybody has a right to feel that way because your person, which is not your body, your person, that the you are inside is the most valuable thing in the universe.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop being valuable because you were divorced or you killed somebody or you lost your job or your kids don't, you think of all the reasons why people hate themselves. They got a sexually transmitted disease or they used to be a prostitute or none of that stuff diminishes your intrinsic value as a human being. But what happens is we live in a society that convinces us that we are disposable and that we can make mistakes or make choices that eliminates or diminishes our value.
Yeah, and we again, we're in the times of cancel culture where, one mistake, one misstep, two missteps even, that can be it for you. And so I'm such a proponent of teachable moments, the idea that, yes, you can make mistakes. That's not to say there won't be consequences, right? There can be consequences. But nobody's above being rehabilitated because if that's the case, 99.9% of us would be discarded, right? Yeah. And so, that's why it's so critical that we keep that in mind and we do have grace for others and we do have grace for ourselves, which is extremely difficult for a lot of people. Again, it's something that I'm working through. I took a self-compassion quiz at selfcompassion.org and the results were frightening. It showed that I wasn't as compassionate to myself as I am with other people. And what that looks like is, it manifests itself through and we all have negative thoughts, but then we fall down that rabbit hole, right? Because it's like it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then it just starts looking and feeling a way that's not conducive for us to live healthy, thriving lives. So I do want to get to, because you said that you say no, right, to preserve your wellness, and I think that's such a critical point, especially as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I'm starting to learn myself the importance of saying, no, I cannot do that, right? The money might not be there, the timing might not be right, but I recognize how important it is to say no because you can run yourself ragged, right? If you don't make those decisions, if you feel that you're worth something, that's one of the reasons why I like Nipsey Hussle. I didn't listen to his music prior to his death, God bless the dead. But the idea that he said, listen, I'm going to sell my mixtape for $100, right? You're either going to buy it or you're not. I'm not. I know who I am. I know my worth. There's going to be some people who are like, yo, we with you, we riding. And there's going to be people who are like, him and Han. That's okay if you want a him and Han, right? But that clearly means that you're not for me and I'm not for you, right?
I tell people there's no shame in me setting my price and there's no shame in you saying I'm not willing to pay it. There's no shame.
Yeah.
There's no shame in me saying this is what I charge for that, and there's no shame in you saying I'm not willing to pay that. And here's how far I go now with the word no. I don't tell people I can't. I tell people I won't. Meaning, I evolved, and I didn't start out this way. It took me years to get there.
Heavy.
Where you know, and I say there are things I can't do. There are things that I've never done. There are things that I may never do, but there's nothing that I can't do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's not true when somebody says, "Can you come speak for my group for free?" I could do it. It's not true if I tell them I can't. It's not true. You know,
Yeah.
but we say we can't almost to make an excuse for doing. You know what I'm saying? And I don't do that anymore. So no, I was like, no, I won't. I won't do that. You know,
Yeah.
or I will do that, but not I can't because it's not true that I can't. And it's all about taking ownership of an agency of your right to spend your time, your money, your energy, which are finite. You got 24 hours in a day. You got so much energy you can, you know, so many calories you can burn to get through the day. You know, energy's real. You got 20, you know, you have a right to decide how you want to spend it, you know. And I remember when I was first a manager at Black Enterprise, my first time really running a large staff when I was made a top editor, you know, in 1995. And I had this thing where, and I was married with children, but the assumption made by people that if somebody was single with no kids, they should be the ones to work late, and the people with married with kids should be allowed to go home at the end of the day. If I'm like, just because you're single and no children doesn't, or you're married with children, doesn't make your time any more valuable than the person who's single with no children.
Yeah.
That's not fair. You know, if the person just wants to go home and hang upside down in their closet, that's their time. And so I just believe that after a while, you got to build the courage to say no without excuses, without explanation, without justification, because you have a right to. You own yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't owe it to anybody else. And like my kids have heard this a million times when I was raising them. They're all grown. My youngest are in their late 20s now, and they'll laugh because they used to hate it when I said it. I would say to them when they would ask me for something, I'd say no. And they'd say, but why? But why? And I would say, when I say yes, you don't question my judgment. You just accept it. So don't question my judgment when I say
now
no.
you want a full-blown explanation and reason as to why.
And now I apply that with everything in my life. I explain if I want to explain. If I explain, it's out of love, not out of obligation. But if I say no, I don't have to justify why I won't do it. I have a right to do that. And people taking true ownership of themselves, which is another definition of what we mean by grown, and saying, no, I am owner of me. I am in charge of me. I'm the boss of me. And it's something that Black people and women in particular, they're not the only ones. We live in a society that tells us we don't belong to ourselves. I mean, just take the whole battle between NFL players and owners is about who, you know, that there's a plantation mentality around that's different than the NBA around what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And a big part of sexual harassment, whether it's male to female, female to female, male to male, you know, I agree with you that the gender thing doesn't change the larger dynamic of harassment and abuse.
Exactly.
But no matter what it is, it's one person saying, basically, I own you and you have to do what I say you have to do, whether you want to or not. And it's just very critical that we, and I try to do this with my children, to say, you own you. I don't own you as your father. You own you. You're in charge of you. And at some point, when you become an adult, my stewardship over you as a minor child will end, and then you have a right to say no.
Yeah.
You know, my kids tell me no all the time.
as does my daughter. My daughter. Now, and with that being said, you know, especially the idea of masculinity and how that idea continues to evolve, and it was put on full display. Was that yesterday? Yesterday, it was put on full display where I was sitting outside my favorite bookstore reading a book, and it was a young lady. She was attractive. I definitely noticed her. She was across the street, and I hear two brothers, two older gentlemen walking down. One guy is across the street making rude comments towards her. They weren't close enough for me to say something, and so he did that walking down the street. And then in turn, she came across the street to go back into the bookstore, and there was a car coming. They're beeping their horn, and I was just like, again, I attribute it to my growth, and I'm just like, sis, I apologize. You had to experience that because I felt uncomfortable.
Right.
I felt like this. It's happened to me over the years, maybe once or twice, but nothing even to the extent of this, right? So I recognize how one could potentially feel, and so to experience that on a daily basis, it's unfortunate. So that's why I'm so glad that we're starting to see this, people being held accountable, men in particular, for how they're showing up in this world. And it's just like, no, these behaviors are no longer acceptable. Unfortunately, when we talk about from the top, the guy who's in the White House, it's unfortunate for sure. But what are your thoughts about how we're starting to evolve as a society with regards to that idea of masculinity?
I'm very encouraged by it. And in the grown zone, again, since we're talking about relationships, we go back to what were boys, in this case, taught about what manhood is, and what girls are taught about what to expect from men, starting when they're children. And unfortunately, a lot of those lessons come from the people and institutions we're taught to trust. And I'm going to use an example, the church. And this whole idea that men are hunters. And my thing is, if you position men as hunters, because that's the mentality when an attractive woman walks down the street, or you're giving her a compliment when you tell her how fine she is, and you give her a compliment when you're like, "Oh, I sure would like to hit that." All those things that I was taught by my uncles that, this is you supposed to bag that, honey. You're supposed to, and it's this whole mentality that what we call benign predatory behavior is acceptable. That the benignness of it makes the predatory part acceptable. And so I have this thing where this whole idea that I've heard preached from pulpits. Oh, men are hunters and women are, and if you say men are hunters, aren't you saying women are prey?
Prey. Yeah.
But oh no, that's not what we mean. I said, but you can't avoid that. And then I take it back, to, the whole Adam and Eve, story. And I'm like, Adam's original job was not hunting. He was a gardener. He wasn't put there to be his prey or his servant or she was put there for partnership and companionship.
Yeah.
So this idea that, Eve was not a conquest of Adam. Women aren't there to be the conquest of men. Human beings aren't designed, no matter what you believe, and you can be totally agnostic. We weren't designed to hunt each other. That's not a healthy archetype of behavior on any level. Yet churches, some relationship experts, schools, parents, I know what my uncles and my father, let me take that back. My father and my father figure never told me that. But I had uncles, one uncle in particular that was like, pull me aside, see that? I'm like 11. Here's what, you see that girl over there? You never turn down any sex. He didn't say sex. You know what I'm saying? Think of all the things that we're told either directly or indirectly, whether it's a James Bond movie, where James Bond is James Bond because any chick he wants, he can bag her. Even if he's going to kill her 15 minutes later. Think of all of that. And so my thing is, I am encouraged because there are people like you and a whole bunch of other, both men and women, who are challenging some of the traditional notions of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a healthy male and what that means in terms of human interaction. And I am personally passionate about going back to challenge certain institutions, challenge so-called conventional wisdom, whether it comes out of the church, out of a relationship book, out of schools or whatever, that planted those unhealthy seeds of toxic behavior when we were boys. And I speak particularly as a black boy growing up in a black, community where most of the unhealthy things I was taught about how to interact with women were taught to me, not just by men, but by women. You know how many black mamas tell their daughters, keep your legs closed, but they're proud about how their boys are like, look, everybody wants my boy. Everybody wants that. You know,
Yeah.
so I think I'm very encouraged, but I think it's going to force us to have to be very, very honest about, all kinds of things. We could do a whole nother show about the whole R. Kelly situation and the keys that led to that disaster. But I'm
Yeah.
very encouraged that we're having these conversations. At Black Men Excel, where we met face to face finally last year, and we did that big session on mental health in Black men, and there must have been
Yeah.
like 600 people in the room. And my thing was like, I remember pitching an idea like that at one of our conferences 10 years ago, and it didn't even get out of the discussion stage, and because it was like, you couldn't get 30 men, you couldn't get 15 men in the room to talk about that, much less 600, and in front of
Yeah.
women too. So I looked
Yeah.
at that, and I'm like, in the meeting you and I met through BE Modern Man, I must know 40 or 50 brothers who are doing the kind of work that you're doing, and that was unheard of. First of all, you know what I'm saying? So I'm very, very encouraged, and that's why when I see what you're doing, and I got to get down to Philly to one of your group sessions.
Oh yeah,
Soon. I
it
got
definitely
to.
it's and it's it's maybe sometime in September because that's when we'll be having the 1 year anniversary as long as everything goes right. But yeah, it's something that's necessary. On my previous podcast, I just talked about my experience and just trying to navigate this idea of manhood, void of uncles, void of a father. I had a father figure, but we didn't have.
Right.
I had a stepfather. We didn't really have much information, so everything that I was getting would be from friends or their father, or hip hop. And that's why I'm so critical of hip hop to this day. I have such a love-hate relationship because I was, now I'm dating a beautiful chocolate sister, but there was a period of time there was no way I would talk to a dark-skinned black woman, right? And it's just because of the imagery that was being pushed to me because I came up big during the video era, music video era. So everything, the girl wavy hair, light skin, and so now it's just important for me to continue to truly have this conversation where brothers can be challenged. I think that's one thing that I'm big on challenging brothers in their thought process, because we have all been conditioned. Black Star, Most Def says our conditions have been conditioned, right? Well, I think it came from school days, but it's like because it's necessary that we have this shift. If we're talking about longevity, if we talk about the black family, no matter what that black family looks like, and why it's so important for us to continue on in a more healthier way. We're at a perfect time where if we can really shift this idea of masculinity, then that can truly begin to help us heal from the generational trauma that we've experienced over time. And so, I'm a big believer in that, and I'm appreciative that I have my platform and your platform is larger. And I'm glad you're saying, this is what I believe in. This is who I am, right? This is how I'm showing up in the world to let people know. And I'm going to use my platform to spread the importance of just wellness in general. So I appreciate you for that. We only got a few minutes left. I hope we won't get cut off. But, I want you to just to briefly talk about your event that's taking place on June 13th, correct?
Yes, June 13th, Thursday at the Paul Robeson Campus Center at Rutgers University in Newark. You can go to grownzone.com/success series. That's grownzone.com/success series to register. If you register between today and Friday, that's tomorrow, right? Maybe I'll let it go to Saturday. You could also get a chance to get a complimentary registration to our Forward Conference in Charlotte, which is taking place in a few weeks, which is our major national entrepreneurs conference. So that's an incentive to register soon because I have a certain number of free passes to that conference. But the point of it is it's a masterclass series where I teach everything that I've learned over the last 35 going on 40 years about success as defined by financial success, business success, relationships, and around this idea that much of what we're being taught, as I said earlier in our conversation, by the so-called experts that sounds good doesn't work in real life,
Yeah.
And because of the entrepreneurs that I've gotten to know and executives and successful people in all walks of life. And if you follow me on social media, you know, you can get a glimpse of that. I've accumulated a tremendous amount of knowledge and information about what works and what doesn't work. And so my thing is, I always wanted to teach a class that when people really want to be successful, but they want to cut through the bullshit or not be distracted by the bullshit, because there's a lot of it out there, about what it takes to build wealth and be happy and to be successful and to love your own life. This class is designed to do that. And the goal is to do it at least once a month. I've already gotten invitations to take it to Atlanta and Chicago, so hopefully that can happen by 2020. But it really is meant to be a class, not a lecture, a class where I literally teach what I know works, because I know the people ranging from people like the late Reginald F. Lewis to, you know, Kathy Hughes to, I mean, being a Black Enterprise for 30 plus years has afforded me one-on-one access and conversation with some of the most successful people in every industry, in every profession, who also were very honest with me about the mistakes they've made with their mental health, their relationship choices, et cetera, et cetera. And while I won't be outing people about some of these things, you know, what I know doesn't just come from my own personal experience. It comes from 30 years of watching careers rise and fall, companies rise and fall, people win and lose, and understanding the behind the scenes story of how that happens. So the curriculum is designed to help people learn what they need to know to really succeed and not to be distracted or misled by what passes as conventional wisdom in this era of marketing success. I mean, especially driven by social media. People look at a meme and some of that stuff people post as memes, and I'm like, that ain't true. That just ain't true. It sounds real good, but it ain't true.
Talk about how to put it into practice, right? It sounds good on the meme.
Yeah.
You know, healing and everything sounds great on the meme, but when you talk about having to do it, you know, entrepreneurialism, no matter what it is, it's hard as hell to really put it into action. Yeah. So that's great to hear.
So the idea is to cut through that. And again, anybody who really is, here's the question that I ask myself even when I put the thing together. There are people who are, based on what they're being told, are doing everything right, and it's still not working. And when that happens, we assume it's because of us. It's us. What we need to do is challenge whether what we're being told is the right thing. And so a big part of the class is challenging things like getting a high credit score is a wealth building, you know, activity. There's no correlation between your credit score and your capacity to create wealth. But Equifax wants you to believe that, and TransUnion wants to believe that. And why do they want you to believe that? Because they're selling credit reports. They're selling credit repair. And so now you think, oh, if I don't have a 700 credit score, you know, I must be doing something wrong. And then that turns into, you know, I'm not worth anything because I don't have a 700, 800 credit score. And again, and then if you're not worth anything, why even try to be successful?
Exactly.
So it's about that. I want to set people free wherever they are in their life, entrepreneurs, professionals, students, whoever, to say, let's get past the BS to what really matters in terms of your desire to be successful, however you define success. And so it's going to be,
sounds good.
It's going to be research backed, fact backed, you know, not just, you know, nice quotes and sayings that sound good. And I read it in the book. Some people can reach me anywhere on social media at Alfred Edmond Jr., ALFRED, EDMONDJR on Instagram, Twitter. They can DM me if we're connected. I respond to everybody unless you're really aggravating. So I'm very accessible. Everybody knows I love social media and I'm on it all the time. But also you can email me at alfred@grownzone.com. That's ALFRED @grownzone.com. And definitely I hope to see as many people as can get there on June 13th, Thursday. That's a week from today. For my grownzone.com Destination Success Series. You can go to grownzone.com/success series and register to attend and learn more about what's going to be happening there on June 13th.
All right, sounds good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this on Monday, or Sunday or Monday, so, you know, I have some days So the people who are tuning in, who tune in via iTunes or SoundCloud or what have you, they'll have an opportunity to potentially sign up. So we'll get it out soon.
Man. I appreciate
no,
it.
Listen, as always, I appreciate you. Yeah, I don't even know what else to say. It's a lot that I can say, but I just want to say, listen, I appreciate you for being, a positive and a healthy role model for brothers like myself and other brothers with whom I've come in contact with as a result of you and the work that you're doing at Black Enterprise. So it definitely means a lot to me. So I thank you.
No doubt, no doubt. And I feel the same way about you, man. Feel the same way about you.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, brother.
All right, bro.
All right, talk to you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Peace.